Plastic crack is a thing.
I totally am in on the plastic crack.
I think plastic crack is a perfect description because once you get addicted, you gotta have your next fix. Where's the next big thing?
I mean, I guess I kind of resonate with the plastic crack analogy. Yeah, for sure.
I'm just a user. I'm a heavy user, I guess.
I agree. I mean, it is plastic crack. Once you get that one piece, you're hooked.
You know what? There is no misdiagnosing plastic crack.
Welcome to Plastic Chats, the special interviews of the Plastic Crack documentary series. And today's topic is
Star Wars action figures, modern versus vintage.
So, let's start the show!
Hi, my name is Guillermo Olivo and welcome to Plastic Chats. Plastic Chats are additional episodes of the Plastic Crack documentary series. These episodes were recorded during the 2020 pandemic for you in the future, while some of us were, quarantining, trying to flatten the curve of this lovely days that we were living. But hopefully you guys in the future are watching this from some outdoor location. Today, we have a really cool episode. It's not just a topic. It's a topic that if you happen to be a Star Wars fan, it's going to hit home. But at the same time, my guest today is a luxury of a guest. This is probably the third attempt to get her on camera. It's, the technology has been being a challenge during these crazy times. And she's a very busy person, so I'm super grateful, extremely grateful to have her today on the show. And let's meet our guest. Robin Bocra, how are you, doctor?
How are you, Guillermo? What's new? Thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you. Thank you for coming. I know you have a very hectic schedule and you recently became a mom. And at the same time, we're dealing with this quarantine pandemic and trying to cope up. We're not going to talk too much about that. But I'm really thankful for you to giving some of your precious time to have Star Wars talk. Let's talk about Star Wars.
Yes, it's my favorite topic. It really is. I talk about it all the time, and some friends just are like, they suddenly have to get off the phone, so they've had enough of it. But if you want to talk Star Wars, you're my best friend.
It's never enough. And according to my notes, you're being a fan since the age of 5. Is that correct?
Just 2 months basically before I turned 5 is the first time that I saw the film with my mom and dad in Edison at a first run theater. And it's influenced me so much that, here I am today, a pretty big collector.
We're talking about Return of the Jedi, correct?
No, back in 77,
Oh.
I saw, because I was born in 72. So I was almost 5 when the first
age.
film came out. Yeah, early days. So
Perfect.
those are like my first images I have of Luke and Leia swinging across that chasm and escaping in the Death Star, and that's like some of the first images I have of just remembering the film. So
a kiss from good luck. That's funny that that everybody that I talk to, they all have like a very specific moment within A New Hope that they click. They remember when they were sitting in the theaters. I didn't see A New Hope. I was born that year, so I saw it later on. But do you think that's the actual moment that clicks you to A New Hope when Luke and Leia are doing that jump?
as a kid thinking back, that is the scene that I remember as a child from that for some reason that little vignette, those couple of moments when she gives him a kiss on the cheek and they swing, and it's stressful because they could have fallen. As a little kid, you're like, ah, but they made it, and I just remember that. And so there you go.
That's interesting. Well, I remember one of my friends having, an improvised type of belt with like a cord trying to do the same thing, and he hit himself in the neck. My moment with A New Hope, with the very first time, was when Vader was stomping on Obi-Wan's robe. I just couldn't believe it. Like, what happened? Did he die? He disappear? Is this a trick? What's going on? And that every time that I see that moment, it happens to me. Like, I click back to those days.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about that background. And for those watching, this is just a piece of the actual museum.
The museum,
Yep.
yeah, it's hard to refer to my own collection as a museum. I just consider it a collection. But the collection now spans rooms and hallways, and
Plural.
It just keeps vomiting out from like the epicenter, and and then it finds things. And then my husband says, "This isn't going to stay here, right?" And I was like, "No, that Ada Walker's supposed to be there on the counter in the kitchen." He's like, "Oh, no, it isn't. No, it isn't." So then I'm always carrying these things around with me, because if not, it would be everywhere in every room on every flat surface, and I have to control myself, which is not an easy thing.
So how are you? Because we all have different ways of splitting. Where we're talking rooms and plural, we all have different ways. Like I have a Star Wars room, and everything in Star Wars is contained there. And of course, I'm taping from the Joe room / I have some other stuff in here as well. But do you go like vintage, modern? How do you go? How does it split?
Well, basically, I display 99.9% vintage. And I have modern prototypes, some wax molds, some first shots. Like I have those. I have like an unproduced, a couple of unproduced things that are modern, but basically everything is vintage. And then I have a closet that I keep all the modern in. Not that I don't love it, but I just don't have the room to display it. And they were all gifts given to me over Christmases from my mother. Once all the vintage stopped, and then the 80s, 88, 89, 90, and the 90s, every Christmas she would still give me Star Wars. There would still be Star Wars under the tree, and I'd be like, "Mom, I don't want this. It's not the same. You just don't get it." But I couldn't throw it out, and I wasn't going to give it away, so I just started to amass lots of vintage pieces. And now I look at them, and I'm so glad that she actually did buy those for me, because it chronicled all the years of all the Star Wars toys that came out. And I mean, and she bought massive amounts of it. So I have almost everything. So from the US, and I appreciate the fact that she did that now. Back then, I was that annoying teenager going, "That's like so not cool." God, I can't believe it. But now I have it all, and I love it. But I keep it in there.
There you go.
It's the dirty secret that I have a lot of modern. So we don't talk about it, but I do have it, and I love it all. So.
We're gonna delve into that later on, because that's basically the subject of today's episode. But I'm glad that you mentioned your mom, a fellow Floridian like myself.
Yes.
She has been, according to my notes and our conversations offline, she has been a major influence in your journey as a collector, as a science fiction fan. Tell me a little bit more about that.
She was an original Trekkie. And when the shows were on, she used to wear Spock ears in public.
In public.
And she'll say she didn't, but I've seen pictures of her. She had the Spock ears. She put that insignia, that Star Trek insignia, on every one of her outfits, and she'd go out in public wearing them. And she loved, but she loved all sci-fi her whole life. Everything. So as a kid, she would always take me to the movies, and she was a huge influence for anything science fiction. And then when Star Wars came out, she was a huge fan herself. So we would go all the time, and then we'd go to Toys R Us or KB Toy or whatnot, and then buy toys or look at the toys or talk about the toys. And I played with the toys. And then, you played with the kids on the street, because that's what you played. You played Star Wars. So every day was Star Wars, and she was a very big proponent, and she promoted it a million times. So it was great having her as my mom.
That's so good to hear, because the parents are super influential in that sense, and hopefully we'll pass that along, because I'm trying. Like, I can't get my kid away from Fortnite, but I always try, and we always come up with marathons. He saw Rebels and every single series with me, but back then I think that was a heavily influential.
For the kids today, they don't necessarily care about toys, but you can get their attention with video. So if you can get their eyes to watch Rebels or Clone Wars or anything, or the movies, you can at least get that part of them to see it, and then they'll recognize it, and then they'll hopefully like it. If you can't get them playing with toys because even like 7 or 8-year-olds today are not interested in toys.
Yeah.
Video games, yes, but if you can at least get their attention, they'll at least have that in their vocabulary. And that's so important, is for them to have these characters in their mind and know them and know their interrelations.
My kid is now at 11, but I believe he was 8 when we did the whole marathon with Rebels, and it was a great bonding experience. Like, it was something that for him, it was like Daddy and I time, like, to watch Rebels, and he loved it and he cried with the characters. So I think that's the beauty of Star Wars in general. But we also you and I would share a very similar experience with Star Tours.
Yes.
But before we get there, and so I don't want to forget this. There's this famous picture of you as Princess Leia wearing the combat poncho of Endor.
Yes, my mother made that for me.
Exactly.
That was October 1983. That was my Halloween costume, and that's what I wanted to be that year. And you know, I had a pair of gray pants, and I used Elmer's glue, and I put a yellow ribbon down the side of the pants, which came off the first time I washed them. My mother washed them. There's just 2 yellow ribbons floating around.
Right.
Had a pair of boots and a hefty bag with foam around a G.I. Joe helmet.
Uh-huh.
So you had to improvise.
Yes,
my mother made the poncho, and I had a belt, and then I had a part of another gun, which I used because there was no Princess Leia blaster back then. So I had to improvise from like another like sci-fi gun. I had to take a part of it, which was like the shoulder extension part, because it looked just like it. And I was like, and I'm ready to go. And there I was, and of course nobody knew who I was because nobody was cool. So everyone's like, well, you know, what are you dressed as? You know, you got those army fatigues on. And I was like, I'm Princess Leia, thank you very much. But so I had to tell every single person that, you know, it's like trick or treat, and they're like, you know, they're a ghost, that's a pirate, and I'm Princess Leia.
You had to explain.
Everyone.
That's funny because the costume is dead on, right on point. I love that picture.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. But yeah, you know, all the people answering the doors, they had no idea. So, but I knew, and of course I then wore it after the fact, you know, playing on the street, you know, then that thing got filthy. So let's just say I wore it a lot.
Well, it means you enjoyed it. That's the whole purpose of costumes. So, but I see a connection with Endor. Let's talk about that, because now we can jump into the Star Tours experience. Like my personal experience, I don't know if you remember the story, but my dad was trying to talk to me, and he was like trying to get my attention away from the front, and I was just walking sideways, and then he suddenly says, "Stop, turn around." That was my first time in Star Tours Orlando, and I turned around and I had the AT-AT right in front of me, and that was just a mind-blowing experience that I will never forget. Tell me about yours.
Well, I remember, I didn't even realize. I think I had remembered that there, you know, at the front that they said that, you know, it was open and to visit it. And then, you know, I walk in and there actually was real, you know, people dressed up as Ewoks there. And of course, I see one and it's like 100 degrees out. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor person is like sweating. But I didn't care. I grabbed them. I swung them around, and I'm like horrible. I'm like hugging them so tight, and I was like, I love you. And then after I was done molesting this poor soul,
poor guy, yeah.
And my mother got enough pictures, so that's good. I have proof. Then it's like I'm looking, and right there is a life-size AT-AT walker with the paw up, and I was like, you got to be kidding me! And like a village with the trees, and I was like, your mouth drops, because it was like a dead subject for so long. It was gone. It was over. Nobody wanted it. And everything was like gone. And then suddenly the gift that here it is, and you can see it and you could actually feel it. And that was the first, I have to say, it's probably one of the best days of my life.
Yeah.
Was seeing that.
By means. Orlando had a different meaning before, and in my case, before and after the Star Tours. Yeah, for sure. And then that picture, I think I have pictures of under the lifted legs.
Yes.
Of different stages of my life, all the way to having my own kid. And you're not supposed to go there, but I have pictures like every 10 years. So you can see the progress on that. But I saw one of your pictures. You were also underneath the leg, right?
Well, I don't know whether you can do that anymore. I haven't been there I don't like probably like 3 years, 4 years. But
So you haven't you haven't seen Galaxy's Edge then?
I have not. I have not been able to. We have been so busy with work that I haven't been able to sneak away. And then when I had planned on going, all of this, everything happened.
Exploded.
Yeah,
I was super lucky. I was super lucky to go to the one in Anaheim before the pandemic, and it was hilarious because it was one of the first trips of the actual ride, and there were marketing people in there. There were people that from the park. So when we got to the point, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but we were inside the Falcon, piloting the Falcon, and then I hear that we need to jump into hyperdrive, and I told my co-pilot, punch that level. So when we got out, the marketing guys were like, "Well, you've been here before, because how do you know?" I'm like, no, dude, no. This is my first time, but every Star Wars fan knows how to punch the level for hyperdrive. So
it's a given.
You gotta go. It's a mind-blowing experience. As soon as we have proper conditions, you should go.
I want to so very bad now that I have a little one at home who's tomorrow going to be 4 weeks old. So it's traveling is going to be a little harder. I can go, and then my husband will have to stay home, and but I really want to go. I feel like I've missed so much.
Well, thankfully it's going to be there for a while, so you will see it down the road. You will see it.
I'm the only one. It's like I'm the only one of my friends who basically hasn't gone, and everyone goes, "You haven't gone?" I'm like, well, this whole pandemic hit, and I would have gone in March. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I haven't been in the one in Orlando, which is like 4 hours away from me, but the other one was just mere luck. But now let's go back to Endor real quick. Tell me about those Ewoks in the back.
Well, you see 2 masks, and then you see a baby, a full complete, it's baby Nippet.
A very famous baby, I may add.
Yes, it's the one that was in the basket that you see for the moment that's getting, pet on the head, little mouth's going. This is a full puppet that's open, so you can actually put your hand all the way up through and open up the mouth and move the head. And it's wires that are actually attached all like on the outside, so you can move it. So you can move the arms and legs if you wanted to.
But the reason that you have more than one Ewok is because there's like a preference for Endor in your case, because I can see a pattern here. Like dresses, Leia from Endor, and then surrounded by the actual Ewoks that were in the movie.
They're cute. They're cute. I mean, I know that George Lucas really made it for the young girls. I knew that he was secretly thinking, that whole planet of Wookiees, that would have been silly. But a planet of Ewoks, now he had something. So there you go.
He was ahead of his time.
Yeah, so they're cute, and I've been lucky enough to be able to get them. And when people find out that you buy one, then they say, "Hey, do you want another?" And then I get offered Ewok items all the time now. And it's not that it was intentional to start off with, but once you start collecting, then everybody just takes for granted that that's what you want. So if you're going to get offered movie props, you just go, yes.
Yeah.
You say, thank you. Yes, I'm interested. You just don't go, no.
I'll take it. Yeah, for sure. I remember that you went and visited Gus Lopez, right? And
yes,
talking about movie props.
Yeah, Gus has a fabulous collection. He's a really nice guy. He's a good friend. He has so many incredible pieces that it takes you days to go through and really see what he has. And he's so knowledgeable. There's nothing you could ask him that he doesn't know. It's so you can't stump him. You can't. And I think about it. I'm like, I gotta ask him a question he doesn't know. And it's like, who am I kidding? He knows it all. Yeah. So yeah, he's pretty cool.
He was the first, I guess, that started this game, But we'll spend a day in. I think it was a full day taping in his house, and we have one room per episode for the actual documentary series, and it's going to be 13 episodes at the end, and there's 13 rooms, one different room per episode. It's just mind blowing. But on top of that, he's such a nice guy. But let's go back to you. So you're a doctor. Tell me about it.
Well, went to Temple Medical School in Philadelphia, I met my husband there 24 years ago. I can't believe it sometimes. And we practice together and have many offices throughout the state of New Jersey. And it's been good. I have a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun with my patients. You know, we talk, we laugh. I always try to make people laugh a little bit. And they always know that they have somebody there for them. So I try to give them that feel that they know that they can always depend on them.
Yep. Is there a connection with the Luke synthetic arm and at the end of episode, at the end of The Empire Strikes Back when 2-1B is pinching the nose? I have that in my notes.
You know, everybody always takes for granted that I became a doctor because of the science fiction, and they are correct. Everything in my life led up to me loving science through science fiction. So majoring in biology and chemistry and loving physics. I mean, yes, a girl who loves physics. I just have always loved the sciences because I love science fiction so much. And then becoming a doctor was just the natural transition of what you do with a degree in it. So it led to that. So it was probably subliminal in some ways, seeing, you know, Luke's hand cut off and then this new synthetic one that was put on perhaps led to where I am today, but it just was like a natural metamorphosis from one thing to another to being a part of it today. And I hope that, you know, I can be around a long time and medicine could make a difference in my life. As I get older, the way, you know, I'm not saying the way it did for Luke, because that would be strange, but, but, you know, medicine's become such a big part of changing how we live and how long we live and the quality of our life. So it's really nice to be a part of something that can be so beneficial to so many.
Yeah, thank you for what you do, even if it doesn't apply synthetic limbs out of, you know, limbs that you lost.
Someday, trust me, someday there's so many amazing things that are done with robotics and nerve endings and the sensors that they can help people walk again, where they've lost limbs, lost the ability to walk, that now there are these robotic bodies that you can be put into that can sense the motion. And now people are walking that don't have legs, that, you know, and have arms now that are moving just from the nerve ending sensation and reading it through the mind. That it's incredible. It really is.
It is. And the reason that I'm asking these questions is because I want to, it's probably gonna need me. I'm gonna need like 5 hours to actually picture your devotion for Star Wars, and hence why I'm asking these key questions, because I know, because we talk offline, how passionate you are about Star Wars and how passionate how you love this in general. So hence why I'm mentioning this, even to get to the point to becoming a doctor, somewhat influenced by it, is just an amazing thing. It's part of the magic of this mutual interest that we both have, which is the Star Wars.
I got to meet Jeremy Bulloch many years ago, out in Pennsylvania, right, like, I can't think of the name of the convention center. It was right outside of Philadelphia by King of Prussia. And he was sitting at a table, nobody's talking to him. I mean, literally, no one's talking to Jeremy Bulloch. I mean, Boba Fett, come on.
Boba Fett is right there, right?
Yeah, so of course my mother and I walk up to him and we start talking, and we ended up talking for over an hour. And he was so nice, and he was such a gentleman. He was funny and charming and interesting, the stories he was telling. Then somebody would come up, get an autograph, and I'd hang out, then we'd talk some more. And, you know, he wrote an autograph for me, and he called me a medical genius because I told him that science, you know, my love of science fiction led to my love of science, and because of Star Wars, I'm a doctor today. And because of, you know, that whole trend through my whole life, that always became my focus, that's what I always wanted to do. And it all started with that. And he was so impressed, and I was like, oh my God, he's impressed with that.
Boba Fett is impressed.
Boba Fett is impressed, and he was, you know, that was such a wonderful day. Just talking with him about everything and just his memories and just about his stories. And it was just a great thing. And writing that, I had lost it. I had lost that autograph, and I just found it like 2 months ago, and I've been looking for it for like 10 years now. and I found it, and that's the greatest treasure. I mean, I have so many great things here. That is so irreplaceable, just that autograph. It means so much seeing it. I started to cry. I was like, oh my God, don't cry on it, because it's then going to ruin the picture. But I became all teary on it. So I was.
I'll bet. It's not just an autograph. It's the whole memory lane that triggers.
I met David Prowse that day also.
Wow.
But, you know, the memories really were just hanging out with Jeremy. So.
He was, when I met him, he was such a nice human being. He was.
Yes.
And you know, in these conventions, people take that for granted. They're literally greeting thousands or hundreds of people throughout a weekend, and they don't, you know, we're all humans. And he was super nice to me. So I'm so glad that you found that piece, because it's such a big memory lane. However, let's go back to your intro. It wasn't just the movies, it's the toys actually that got you hooked into the galaxy.
Yeah, I really enjoy. I love the movies. I mean, I know it line by line. You know, I'm that obnoxious person that says all the lines while the film's on until somebody like smacks you a little. But playing with the toys became the everyday thing. You know, with myself, with Marty, with Alan, the three of us every single day, we would meet up at each other's houses with the toys, and then we would go from, you know, setting up scenes and talking about how we were going to battle one another, and that became our life, was always having a couple figures like in our pocket, and, you know, just playing with the toys every single day. And that became a bigger part of it than watching the films. Realize you didn't have the films on VHS to watch immediately. It's not like you could watch
years actually later.
It took years for that, so you had to use your imagination. So then you had to play with the toys, and that's how the films became alive. And that's how all the new scenarios of playing it was new, with all new scenes. So Correct. That's how the films expanded through our childhood, was playing with the toys and making the films even bigger. Because suddenly we were in control of the scenes, and now we could change the dialogue and we could change the characters. And then
dictating the narrative. Oh yeah. I see kids nowadays, especially with my kid, like playing, and he does amazing things on the video consoles and stuff. But I don't know, I have this feeling like we were so lucky, like, you know, building a huge base in the backyard, a huge snow base in the backyard was just the best thing ever. What was your favorite action figure back then?
That's a hard one. It probably was Darth Vader.
Oh yeah?
It probably was. Back then I liked Darth Vader because he just, I don't want to use the word debonair, but James Earl Jones's voice was powerful. Oh, yeah. And I loved Luke. Luke always was my favorite. I always carried Luke around.
You have a focus on Luke, right? From my memory.
I have a huge Luke focus. I have a huge Luke focus today. That's just something that I've gravitated to. I don't know how that happened. I just decided that it became a huge fascination, especially with the farm boy Lukes, the A New Hope ones, because every color hair is different, the pants are different, the boots are different. So that's how I have like 50 of those, and they're all different. So, but back then, maybe I liked Vader the most because I had him as a 12-inch figure. I had him and Leia, and I loved the Leia. I never wanted to touch her hair because I was afraid I wouldn't put it back in the donut. But I liked Vader, but then I guess then it just transitioned into Luke.
So it was Luke. Oh, interesting. I gear more towards Empire Strikes Back figures, but then I don't know. Boba Fett was always like the top of my figs, the top of all of my figs. You also you made a group on Facebook called Bespin Prime, and it's a very, very, I love that group, as you know, and it's not because I'm telling you that, because I always say it publicly. You recently have a hashtag display challenge that has been amazing, looking at displays of all the members and stuff. Tell me a little bit more about the group.
Well, I started the group with my friend Dennis Hall, We were just talking about, if we were to have our own group, what would we do? How would we do it? How would we include more people in the community? Because a lot of groups end up in some ways being focused. Mm-hmm. I wanted to bring in the cosplayer friends that I've met over the years, all the 501st. I wanted to bring in all of the play set makers, for these people that make these incredible dioramas and play set, all the artists. I know a lot of people who are droid builders. I mean, they make these fabulous R2-D2s and whatnot. Whatever they're making, I just wanted to bring them in. Plus just fans of the movies and the toy people. So I figured if we created something, we just said and says, if we did this, and then before you know it, and then Dennis said, well, I've already saved the name. And I'm like, I didn't say we were going to, and then he just did it. And then it kind of took off from there. But, we include so many people. And so we brought in a lot of different kinds of fans in some way. And, lately, actually, Dennis started this display challenge because everyone has, everybody, that collects toys. So how do they display it? Do they put them in cabinets? Right. Do they put them on shelves? What do they focus on? Yes, and it's fun to see how everybody puts it together because everybody does it differently, and it's a lot of fun just to see, how everybody does it. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been really, really, really fun. And why Bespin?
I just, we played off a couple of names, and I got that one stuck in my head, and he went with it. I love Empire Strikes Back. I think a lot of people love that film the most. Yeah. And a couple of people told me that my collecting room, because I have these white couches and white ceilings that are very beautiful. So somebody had mentioned that my one of my toy
windows, right? There's an area with big windows, if I recall
yes.
correctly.
So everyone says, a couple of people actually said your collecting room reminded me of, Bespin. And I was like, and Cloud City, and it just stuck in my head. And I was like, that's what I wanted to name my collection, was Bespin Prime. And then, I just said, no, Dennis, we're going to call it Bespin Prime because I'm selfish. So not telling him the real reason why I really wanted Bespin Prime. And Dennis is so easygoing. He went, yeah, okay, that's pretty cool. So it's stuck. So that's technically the name of my collection.
So now you need a life-size Lobot in there.
Lobot?
Yeah. If you're in Bespin Prime, that you can just, tick, and then you're activated. But
I do actually. I could use more Uggnuts than anything, I feel.
You think?
Yeah, I think they'd be a lot more handy.
They go in the basement though, and in the they're more like lower levels.
Yeah, but they're handy and they're capable. I need more handy, capable people that can fix things. So
yeah, for sure, like audio issues.
Thank you. Audio issues. I got a lot of those. You can hear me now.
There is, yes, thankfully, and I love that. There is a closet in your Bespin Prime that is full of modern figures. Is that correct?
It is. It is, in fact, filled with all modern. And they were all gifts from my mother over Christmases after 85, 86, when everything kind of ended, and that was it. And everything went, it went to the dark times. Everything was in the dollar bin. And then she still wanted to have, Star Wars toys for me under the tree. So every year I would, oh, Mom, what is this? This is such crap. Oh,
so those droids that behind you, the Minton card droids, are those from the dollar bin as well? Because I remember those being on clearance.
No, those were not. Actually, I had quite a few Power of the Force ones that I had bought for $1.
Wow.
I know, and I still have them because I would go to KB Toy. We're talking 80, 85, 86, and they're
at the front.
And nobody wanted them, and I would walk in going, how does it, and it hurt me so bad that nobody wanted these items. They had no value. So I was like, well, I'm going to take that one and that one and that one and that one. And, I'd have like 10 and it'd be like $5 plus tax. And I'd be like, I felt sick that my childhood story, my childhood, everything was now on clearance and it was dead. So I would start to buy them. I'd have them in the bag and I'd just put them in a closet, as a kid growing up, I just put them in and I just started accumulating things. Wow. And then I started going to Star Trek conventions And then you'd see everything there that they're like, oh, Star Wars is dead. What you want is Star Trek. Now that's the ticket, kid. And I'd be like, okay, yeah. How much for that sand crawler? $5, huh?
Oh, so well, that's a
nobody wanted these things.
Nobody wanted it. That's a great secret that we should share. Go to Star Trek conventions. The best deal with Star Wars toys are there because they don't want it.
Well, that was then. We're talking 88, 89. I started to go into creation conventions in New York City, right at the Penta Hotel, right across from like Madison Square Garden. And all the stuff would be on sale for nothing, dollar bins. So I would buy things and I'd come home and my handbag weighed like 20 pounds. I'd be dragging it like on the train getting home. Yeah, because I loved it. But I didn't display anything. It would just be kept in boxes and bags and closets. And then years ago, maybe like 7-8 years ago, a friend of mine says, what you really need to do is get these things out of the closet. And if I had the room that you did, Robin, I would start to display. So he influenced me to get things out and to start to look at what I had. And then I realized I'm missing so many things.
Oh, yeah. Well, not only that, looking at them, and especially the way you have a beautiful display, especially the way that you display them. And I see that you fall into the acrylic crack as well. It's not just plastic crack anymore. It's acrylic. It's plastic crack inside acrylic crack, because once you take that route, they just look beautiful in acrylic.
You can take an old figure, the card back could be a little beat up, and you put it in that and it's pretty and it stands up. I mean, there's really nothing you can do with a lot of these items. For them to actually stand to display, for you to look at them, is you have to put them in something, or else they just flop around and then they fall or the bubble falls off.
All right. Not only they're properly preserved, but they're also museum quality displays now, because they look like a museum worthy of.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, the cabinets are beautiful. They make what I have look even better. So yeah.
Yeah. So before we go back to the closet, because you didn't pay attention to the modern part, but because that's going to be the subject of the show. Let's go back to a little segment that we have in between, which is basically any recent find, any recent purchase. Show me what you got.
Show me what you got.
Oh.
It's a modern prototype. So this was a mock-up. It's an unpainted face. And this eventually became a camouflage jacket. So this is how they just started to put it together, and gun, boot. It even has a little tiny grenade
for those listening, describe what you have in your hand, which is amazing, by the way.
Well, this is the Han in trench coat 12-inch, and this is a prototype. Before, if you could see, the face is not painted yet. So this is before they got to the final steps of what it was going to look like. But
tell me about the coat, because it looks yellow, right? It's not the camouflage.
Yeah, this is yellow. This was just for the stitching, to stitch it up to see how it was going to look. It has little pockets here, and beautiful collar, and eventually it became camouflage. So this is just one of the beginning early
90s, early
yes
90s. Power of
exactly.
Force 2.
So that's
when are you getting that guy into acrylic?
We're just no, I have him standing on his own.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, he's not an acrylic. I mean, I actually have an acrylic case that I could put him in, but I just have him, on one of the shelves here, and he's good just the way he is. Everything doesn't have to be an acrylic. I like to have things loose, because I do handle them. I do touch them. I mean, I know that a lot of people are like, oh, you can't. They're toys. They're meant to be enjoyed. So I do move them around a lot. So, and when I have friends over, I like them to be able to open up the cases to be able to look at these things, because if you can't handle it and look at it and really observe it, you're not going to learn.
Right.
So you have to share that learning experience of what some of these toys are, because some of these pieces are so rare and they're hard to come by, and they're from other countries and they're in bad shape. If I find one in really great condition where the paint is still nice, it's fun to share it with somebody of, look at how beautiful the color is still, the paint is still fresh looking. And that's exciting.
That's so nice. That's so nice, because I know myself, I display in a way that you don't really have to touch it if you don't need it, but I respect that. I respect that, especially with that type of items. I do have a rule in my personal case that if it is a prototype, I don't want to have my hands on it. So it's usually case, or I send it to CIS, or I try to preserve it in a way because it's a prototype.
I know. You don't
regular
want the
pieces,
oils
yeah.
of your fingers to touch some things. I don't have any expensive prototypes that aren't encased in acrylic. A lot of the ones that I have are the modern ones.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not necessarily, they're the ones that are out that you can handle they're handleable. You can play with them.
Which leads me to the topic of today's episode, which is...
And today's topic is...
Star Wars action figures, modern versus vintage.
Let's start with, let's assume that someone is listening and they have no idea that this happens. Especially, I will say it's not unique to the Star Wars community, because I see that happening with the G.I. Joe fans and some other lines, but I think it's stronger in the Star Wars community. This, not division, I don't want to call it division, but this separation of church and state between the vintage toys and the modern toys. Can you elaborate to an audience that is not aware of this, what's going on?
Well, basically the vintage toys were from 77 to, I'm going to loosely use the number 1988, even though US Kenner was more like 85, 86, and then that's it. Those are the ones that collectors covet the most. Those are the ones that end up having the most value, the most resale value. And those are the ones that have really gone up to the point where, the prototypes of even those items can be, $100,000 plus. So they're the ones that everybody really that they are all trying to fight to get. Mm-hmm. Now, the other items that came out after that, we all laugh at calling the dark times. It's considered modern figures, and they're not valued as much. And the prices on them never went anywhere. So when the newer films came out in the 90s, nobody really cared. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think what year did Phantom Menace come out?
1999.
99, yeah. So 99, everyone was buying the toys. They were buying them up thinking that they were going to be worth something.
Yeah,
and
I'm
a lot
pay
of them
my
went
kids'
nowhere.
college with this card in Toys R Us, loaded with Padme Amidalas and Jar Jar Binks.
So there's an idea that the only thing worth collecting is only the original pieces from the original films that we grew up with, and everything else is crap, essentially. And looking back now, after all these years, it's not true, because the toys that came out after Return of the Jedi for all the other films actually are made beautifully. The technology really caught up. The computer technology caught up with the craftsmanship of some of these ships, and they're beautiful. The model aspect of it they're amazing, and the figures even got better. So it's a shame that a lot of people say they're not worth it. Well, maybe they don't have the resale value, but they really are a lot of fun and worth taking a look at. And a lot of people I know that are vintage collectors, almost all of them have modern prototypes. They all do. They'll say, "Well, I'm a big vintage collector," and then you go and you look at their collection and you're like, "What about all these figures here that were just released?" Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I have those too. So everybody looks at it, because if it's a prototype or if it's like a first shot, then suddenly it goes back into the collection of vintage.
Right, no, it's accepted because you're owning a prototype. It's not just mass produced. But I think that I don't agree with that. I collect modern, as you know, and I also collect vintage, as you know. And I really enjoy. I never stopped buying toys, so I was just buying the toys of the year. Like, when episode 1 came out, I bought every single one of them before seeing the movie. The expectations was high. I do appreciate the new technologies. I'm in love with the new vintage collection from Hasbro. 3/4. The new face technology. But what what do you think is monetary value the main division between these two worlds? Like,
absolutely, it is a little bit of the prestige of owning these very rare items that are so limited and getting them in really good condition. That if you have something that is, you know, let's say graded an AFA 90, and it's let's say a carded, you know, Boba Fett, and it's you know, and it's graded so high, it's worth thousands and thousands of dollars. So there is a prestige attached to the price sticker of it for some people, that they say, well, this clearly is the way to go, and versus it being loose. A loose one's worth what, $30? A $30 figure now in nice shape,
right, or less.
So yeah, there is that goes with it. But since I don't ever plan on selling these items, it doesn't have the value that other people attach to it, because it's worthless in some sense, because it's never going to get sold. So, you know, and I have a feeling at some point in the future, prices will start to really come down, because our generation is the one who really covets them, really wants to have them all.
Just
And
like tin toys, just like 12-inch dolls. It's gonna die
how
with
about trains? Nobody collects trains anymore. I mean,
No.
trains used to be so valuable. Nobody wants them now, and I have a feeling that day could come for these things. So when people come over and they go, wow, that's so valuable, I go, yeah, I guess so, but it doesn't translate to a monetary number to me. It's an item. It's a collectible, and it's a part of my collection. And someday it'll probably, you know, have no value to somebody else when I'm gone.
If they keep making movies, then maybe. If they keep getting, you know, creating new generations of collectors, then maybe. Because like those kids that were 5 or 7, our age when we watched the original trilogy, they're during the episode 1 release, those 5 years old, 7 years old, they're already hitting their you know, their prime mark, and they're gonna have disposable income in just a matter of years. So I wouldn't be surprised if episode 1 figures, just based on nostalgia, start, like, you know, going up in prices, because that generation is going to be 35 years old, 32 years old. They're going to have some extra cash to spend, and they're just going to collect to the toys that they used to play with back in 1999.
That would be something to see. However, I think that a lot of the younger generation didn't play with toys as much. So I think the reason why us 40 plus to 50 plus year olds, we actually physically played with them. We played with toys. We actually liked toys, and the younger generation maybe didn't play with them. So they will have less of a connection to wanting to buy them, to make those original Phantom Menace toys go up in value, because they maybe didn't play with them. Maybe. I think the connection of playing with the item makes it worth more. That's another reason that I see. So I don't know. I hope you're right.
However, yeah, me too. But you have found a way to create cohesive and peaceful room in Bespin Prime for this topic of today, because you have what, #Modern Mondays?
Every Monday you can display or sell modern items, and all of us have it in our collection, and some people have some wicked, crazy, beautiful things that briefly were in like Toys R Us or wherever they were, and then they were gone, and now they're surfacing, and now a lot of us are starting to get an appreciation for what was made. And they were really beautiful toys, very well thought out, and they do have their place in the collecting community. And we're just, you know, giving everybody a platform for introducing it maybe to the vintage collectors who never took a look at it. So now they're looking at it going, you know what? It's all right. I like it.
That was gonna be my next question. How's that going? Because if you post modern stuff on a Wednesday, you get like grounded, or?
Oh, yeah, grounded. Yeah, no. No, well, we send a message saying, hey, you know, great item. Just can you please repost it on Monday? We are a vintage page, but Monday, you know, all hell breaks loose with vintage. So all you want all day long, and it really is a great time to learn and expand your vocabulary on toys, because if you love Star Wars, you should love all the toys and at least appreciate them and at least know what they are. So it is a time for us all to go back to school to say, I've never seen that before. Wow. And the merchandising actually for Star Wars, when the newer films came out in 99 and on, throughout the world, so many, the candies and the cookies and the crackers and the toys that were now so all these things now.
I love
so
those displays, those episode 1 displays. I'm always
Yes.
mind blown with your pictures of, I just found a new display, and it takes me back to going to a 7-Eleven in 1999 before the premiere, and tell me about that, because that's modern stuff.
The modern, but they're inexpensive and they're fun. To find a whole toy display with all the toys still in it, or all the candies that are still in it, in the box with the header, and to have the whole thing maybe for $50 and you have it all. It's like, and it's old. If you really think about it, some of these, I mean, we're talking over 20 years old for some of these things.
It's not so vintage anymore.
It is vintage. It's old. And when we call it modern, I'm always chuckling to myself because I'm thinking, God, this stuff is kind of getting old, and we're still laughing at it. But even those things are starting to become a little more sparse because people are catching on to, you know what, that's pretty cool, and it's maybe only $50 or $100. So people are buying them, so they're getting less and less seen.
So you think that down the road, every Star Wars collector is going to just get into, naturally, organically walk into modern?
I think I think that I would say, I could guess that 99% of vintage collectors will own something that was made after Return of the Jedi. Just from, it's so cool. Or you get it as a gift and you're not going to throw it out.
Right.
I mean, there's so many things that people have given me that are so cool that I've never seen. And they're in dollar bins at toy shows, and they're the modern things, but I go, you know what, that's really awesome, and I love it, and I look at it. And so everyone's going to end up with pieces of it in their collection, whether they want to admit it or not.
I think that's a message that we need to send. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Go and get modern toys if you like it. I remember seeing this amazing collection, vintage. 99% of the collection was vintage, but the owner had a focus on Boba Fett, and that's my favorite character, as I said. So I was like, oh, great, Boba Fett. And then I started noticing like 30th anniversary figures and modern figures and even vintage collection figures. And I go, I love these guys.
Big ones.
Correct. And
those statues.
And
there's big statues. They're fabulous.
He immediately said, oh, but that's because I have a focus, like excusing himself. And I'm like, dude, just... You like it. You don't have to apologize for that.
You have to collect what you like. It's your collection. It's your flavor. So if you want one thing versus another, you never have to explain yourself. I think a lot of guys I've met are embarrassed that they collect, and they'd like to have cases in their house to show their toys. And they're like, God, I don't know. My relatives will come over. They're going to look at me and they're going to think. And I go, dude, you're 48 years old. Be comfortable in your skin. If that's what you want to put in the dining room, put it in the dining room.
Put it in the dining room.
Enjoy it. Put it out. Life is short. Enjoy it. We should all be able to feel confident that if people collect Hummels, people collect crystal, people collect dolls, and they have cabinets full of dolls. If you're a collector, you should be able to have them because it is a part of your life. It's who you are. So I'm very proud I'm a collector. I tell that to everybody, and anybody says, oh God, I wish I had that kind of, a confidence that I could do that. I said, yes, you can. Put them out, enjoy them, and look at them every day. It makes you feel good.
With that being said, what are you going to do with that closet of yours?
Well, it's a big closet. At some point.
It's a big closet, she says.
It's a big closet, and when friends come over, they go, hey, can I see the closet?
Show me the
and
closet.
I'm like, wait until I show everybody, and then they go, wow, I've never seen that or that, because they're all still sealed.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play with them because I was too old, but I liked them, and I saved them, and I kept them, and they mean a lot to me because they're sentimental. It's like I remember every single one of these things that I had gotten from my mom So I see them, and it just takes me back to knowing how awesome she was.
So that's Power of the Force 2, Power of the Jedi only. But so you don't have like the newer versions, like the new vintage collection.
I have Moff Tarkin. I have that one just because you have to have that one. I have a loose one and I have a carded one, of course. No, I really haven't been buying much of the newer stuff that's come out in the past few years, but I've been buying a lot of things from the Disney store.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been buying a lot of the Rey items and the Kylo Ren items.
Oh, wow.
And the masks and things. And I buy a lot of them, and then I give them away sometimes. So I have friends, they have kids, and they'll have like a birthday. I'm like, do they like Star Wars? Well, who's their favorite character? And so I have another closet of stuff that I'm constantly buying to give to kids so that they can get that experience of something that they can play with. They can get dirty. They could break it. They could enjoy it. They can have fun with it. So I have another closet of like maybe 200 items that I slowly kind of go through and I give away.
I have a big box of Phantom Menace, the Force Awakens action figures that they were like $1 each. I found it at the dollar store.
Yeah.
And every time that I have friends that come over with kids and they go like, and I just give them one of those, like so they feel like they took a Star Wars item with them. It's just that's a neat trick.
It gives them a connection to it, and then maybe they'll remember that, and then they might look at the films even more, and then they could become a collector like us.
Yeah, who knows? Did you get the barge?
I didn't have the barge. I remember when that was coming out, and I thought, God, it's really big.
Yeah.
And every time I see a friend who displays it and packs it with figures, I just go, damn, I should probably buy one. Because it really is, it's a masterpiece.
It's a beautiful piece.
It really is.
And it's super fun to play with.
I probably at some point will get one of those. I'm not gonna lie.
I
feel confident to say I probably will get one of those.
You should. Well, anything that you want to add that I haven't asked? I think the message here is clear. Go modern if you like. It doesn't matter. It's not gonna degrade your status as a collector. And hence why Robin was the perfect guest for today's episode. But anything that you want to add that I haven't asked?
Well, if you are thinking of collecting and you feel lost, if you join our page, we do help mentor. We do help educate. We can give you an idea of, what things sometimes, whether it's worth it or not. It's a very big world of what's it worth? And a lot of people ask me all the time, Robin, what's this worth? They send me an item, they go, is it worth it? And then I'll say, give me some close-up pictures. So you do need guidance. If you want to start to collect, you have to have an idea of, you don't want to spend too much because that can burn you and then give you a sour taste from a beginning that you had. Because I've gone to toy shows and some people think just because it's Star Wars, it's worth a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not. And if you could just learn slowly and get into it just gradually, you'll build a nice collection for yourself that you like, modern, vintage, whatnot, and you'll have a little bit of guidance from some friends. So we all do try to help each other and we all try to mentor each other and give each other an idea of what something is worth. And that's important, is to have a friend in the community to do that.
Well, how do you see yourself in 10 years in regards of your collection? More books or less, or moderns out of the closet?
Modern will be out of the closet. I'm gonna have cases for that. I'm thinking of expanding a whole nother area and taking over, and probably I'll be doubling my display area because I have a lot of stuff that's kind of jammed in cases now and you can't see any of it.
Yeah.
So I hope to get maybe 20 more cases so I can start to spread things out and then buy more.
That's careful. That's a dangerous technique, because I did the same thing. Like I wanted to have, because back then it was super back to back to back to back and you couldn't even appreciate things. So I kind of wanted to space things out, and it's just a matter of time to things to go back to like jam
It will.
You feel like you have more space.
You know, years ago, I used to laugh that I wanted my own Rancho Obi-Wan that my dear friend Steven Sansweet has, which is, you know, an amazing museum of everything from all over the world. And he really does try to have one of everything, of anything Star Wars related. And I used to laugh years ago that I wanted to have one, and slowly I'm really trying to build something similar to that and have pieces that you just don't see. And some of them are really, really inexpensive, but they're cool, like a candy wrapper from Japan. You might say a candy wrapper from Japan, or like a lollipop or an ice pop wrapper. It's like they threw those out. Those didn't last. But if you can have it with all this beautiful artwork written in all different languages, and you can find them, they really are little gems. So to have the space to display these things, so when people come over, they can actually see it, it's a lot of fun.
You should, because if you think about it, the West Coast, they have Gus and then Steve, and there's some more, but they're not that public. But we need an equivalent on the East Coast as well, you know, so we can balance it up.
I'm working on it.
You should. I'll offer as a volunteer to move boxes if you need me to.
Well, that day may be coming next year, so you're gonna come visit me.
I'm in. I'll pay for my flight and everything. Don't worry.
And I'll be coming to visit you most likely in the next 6 months. I'm gonna pay you a visit if that's okay. I'll wear a mask if I have to, but I'm gonna get in there and I'm gonna.
We'll love to. By all means. And I know. I don't want to deviate and make it longer, but you're also into G.I. Joe, aren't you?
Yes, I love G.I. Joe. I love them. And the fact that they put so much time and effort, that's one thing that Kenner missed. And I was thinking of this today because this is the things I think about. The knees should have bent. Having that articulating limb was such a big part of our ships, just to jam them in. It's like that; those legs they were so stiff. If we could have had knees that bent, it would have changed the whole platform of it. But G.I. Joe did it. And I love G.I. Joes. I also collect Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Nice.
Because it is a fellow line to Kenner.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge Kenner aficionado. Anything from that time that was made by Kenner, that poured out of that factory of brilliant men.
And they're related. They feel like close cousins of the Star Wars figures, from my perspective. I collect them too, and it feels like almost the same. And then you look at Indiana Jones right next to Han Solo, and you go like.
The Mummy, yeah.
I see.
Where they used the Mummy and they carved it down, or the Robin Hood with the Gamorrean Guard and Friar Tuck, you know, or the village. They had the same village.
The Ewok village.
The Ewok village, also the battle wagon.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the Robin Hood vehicles are pretty much Endor. Repurposed Endor.
Over. So there's so much that relates. Also the Wild West set that was made, that Wild West set that was made with the saloon, and then that being a creature cantina. So it's so much fun to see the interrelations of the toys over time. So when you love toys, you love them all.
Yep.
So definitely.
This is awesome. And to end up in a high note, when you basically send a message to vintage collectors going into modern. But what about newer collectors that they got excited? Well, let's say those kids from episode 1 who still have armies of clones, because I know a few that Clone Wars was huge and they made so much of them that it was such a rich line. But now they might be considering walking backwards and then actually going into vintage, which it's not necessarily a connection to their childhood, but it's a Star Wars related. What will be your advice for these newer, younger collectors who wants to take into that very complex world?
Well, I tell them that the figures display very nicely together. So, because they're the same size and the ships are built on the same scale. So you can start to buy, I always tell everyone to buy loose first. Get familiar with the figures, start to buy loose armies and put them together and then integrate them and display them together, because they end up being seamless with one another and they really do add to one another, because there's things that were made, you know, in the 90s and the early millennium that are really awesome, that if you put them and you're doing a whole setup, a whole scene, they all look good. So start with stormtroopers and start with, you know, just build armies, and then you can then build up from there and get more specific. But don't feel uncomfortable about mixing old and new. That's my suggestion.
That's how I roll too. I have the mix, and I love them. They're all in the same universe. It's a universe of aliens. So what are we gonna do? By the way, did you get the new retro figures?
I did not. I haven't really been buying a lot of those particular items. I end up going to the Disney store, and I end up buying all the costumes for kids, or the gaffy sticks, or the mugs, and I still am buying all kinds of items, but I'm not necessarily buying those exact toys that are out. There's so much that I read it and I look at it on Modern Monday, and I'm just trying to keep up. I mean, there's like 1,000 pieces at this point I need to buy to catch up. I don't even know what to buy at this point. Yeah, I really don't.
Well, I always say the same thing. Buy what you like. You don't have to get them all in one night, because I can break the bank. So, but I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been a process to make this happen because of technological challenges and stuff. But I'm so happy. I'm so happy because I'm always enjoy, even when we do it offline, I'm always enjoy talking with you about Star Wars. We have this bond of a galactic glue among all of us. So thank you so much for being here today, and for
thanks for inviting me. Anytime you want to talk Star Wars, you know who to call.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thanks, Guillermo. Talk soon.
Please remember that all of these episodes were taped during the crazy 2020 pandemic while we were all locked down and going nuts. So bear with us. Also, and I found out not so long ago, so don't feel bad, that if you hit the bell below, like, you know, the little tiny icon that looks like a bell, YouTube automatically will let you know when the next episode is about to come out. So make it easy, just hit the bell. Like, subscribe, all of that stuff, but hit the bell. Cowabunga, dude! I can't believe I just said that. The next special guest comes from all the way down under, and he comes ready to shred every piece of slice you'll throw at him. Who wrote this? Like, you really want me to say this? Anyways, this will be a very unique Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episode. My good friend Ben Sachi will enlighten us in the turtle way. Don't miss it.
Plastic Chats is a series of special interviews that complements the Plastic Crack documentary series. The interviews are made with informational, entertainment, and educational purposes. Neither this short nor Plastic Crack documentary series are sponsored or endorsed by the companies or brands mentioned in this episode. The comments made on this episode do not reflect the point of view of the production company these series or employees and associates. Help us get found. Click on those 5 stars and stay tuned for the next episode of Plastic Chats.